Any pro player will tell you that the Caribbean is probably the easiest region in the game to guess. This is due to a handful of reasons, but if you ever play someone of even moderate skill, they are going to get these rounds every single time. So that means if you're playing a duel and you do get one of these rounds in the Caribbean and you don't know it, well, you're definitely going to lose. This makes the Caribbean very important to learn, and luckily it's actually quite easy to as well. So let's get started. Now, yes, the Caribbean is a part of the North American continent, but I thought I should split it up into its own video just because of how important it is and how kind of diverse it is from the rest of the continent. But don't worry, we will have a full North American guide with the rest of the countries in the future. Now, the first most important thing we need to discuss is what islands are actually in the game, because honestly, not a lot of them are. The best way to think about it, in my opinion, is that the Dominican Republic is the only sovereign country that has coverage, and the rest are all territories of another country. For example, we have the U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have Bermuda, which is a UK territory. We have Curaçao, which is a Dutch territory. We have Martinique, which is a French territory, and this one is a little bit of an asterisk here. We'll talk about this one in a little bit. And finally, we have the islands of Providencia and San Andres, which are a part of Colombia. And besides parts of Florida and Mexico, that is it for the Caribbean. So there's not really that much covered, and Google really doesn't have any plans in the future either, which kind of sucks. But at least it does make learning a little bit easier. The first thing we're going to talk about here is the island of Bermuda, which is so far away from the rest of the islands that some people say it's not even a part of the Caribbean, but for the sake of this video, it is included. Now, I should note that love it or hate it, car meta is the most important thing when talking about the Caribbean. It's no exception here in Bermuda. This is the black truck that is found in Bermuda and nowhere else. It's a beautiful clue. In combination with that, you will see it driving on the left, and there is usually a single yellow road line in the middle of most roads in Bermuda. The island itself is fairly flat. There are some hills, as you can see here, and a lot of the buildings are actually brightly colored. You'll see like pastel colors, blue, yellow, pinks, oranges, and you can see a whole collection of them right there. That's a pretty good clue for Bermuda. But take a look at the shape of the actual island itself. It's very much a long island. This means that the water is pretty much always visible no matter where you are on the island. And if it's not visible, it's usually just a couple of steps away until you actually can see some water. And speaking of, Bermuda water is actually one of the best clues. Look at this color. Look how turquoise blue it looks. This is a very, very good clue for Bermuda. There's also this famous boat tracker that appears here. It is very common, and you may see it while playing the game. Just look for this famous Bermuda water, and also look to shore, and you'll see the pastel color buildings. So there is Bermuda. It's a fairly easy territory, not much to say about it, and once you see it once, you're probably going to be able to get it for the rest of your life. And considering it is so remote, way out here in the Atlantic Ocean, if you get this and your opponent does not, you are going to win. All right, now let's talk about the U.S. territories of the Caribbean, and that is Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, both of which are right next to each other, which makes it quite easy. Let's take a look at Puerto Rico first. Now, Puerto Rico recently got an update of a bunch of new coverage, so I'll talk about that soon. But just note that these couple of islands that are off the coast that are pretty big, I mean, they're bigger than some of the U.S. Virgin Islands, don't have coverage, so it's just Puerto Rico proper. Now, for those of you who don't like car meta, Puerto Rico is definitely a better place for you because there's really only one car meta that I can share with you, and that's this antenna in the front right of the car. Now, this is only found in the older coverage, which is not as common anymore as the newer one, which we'll talk about next. But if you do see this antenna in the far right, this is found in Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. So you should be in one of those three if you do see this little front right antenna. But here's that same location in 2025. It has changed quite a lot, hasn't it? Here is the newer coverage, and this was taken with the small cam. Now you might see an antenna in the back of the car, but that's commonly found in quite a few different countries. Looks like we're selling some pineapples. So this newer coverage was taken with the small cam, which is found in a ton of different areas around the world. Puerto Rico is actually the first location to get the small cam, which makes it kind of a cool and interesting location in that regard. But it is this large circular-ish shape, kind of like an oval, and in the back there's this extending piece. I'm not really sure how exactly to explain it, but once you see it, you kind of know what it is. This is the small cam, and it's the primary thing you will see in Puerto Rico nowadays. Now, Puerto Rico does drive on the right side of the road, which is not the same as the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is interesting. They also use very similar road lines to the U.S., yellow in the middle, white on the outside. But interestingly, they do use kilometers, just like the rest of the world, not like the US, which they are a part of. Of course, they also speak Spanish, which is one of only 2 places in the Caribbean that does. A very good clue, especially if you're in an urban area, is going to be the area code of 787. This area code is found all throughout Puerto Rico, and it's the only one found in Puerto Rico, so you're likely to see it all over the place. License plates are not required to be on the front of vehicles, so you usually won't see any license plates on the front, which if you do see that antenna we talked about at the beginning, Guam and Northern Mariana Islands both use front license plates, so that can really help you out there. Finally, Puerto Rico is an extremely hilly and mountainous territory. It is very unlikely that you will see flat land unless you are right next to the coast. So with that being said, this is very much a different landscape than Bermuda. And now let's move on to the US Virgin Islands, which consists of 3 different islands. The first one being the big one, and that is going to be St. Croix. This one has the most coverage out of all 3. We then go up to these 2 up here. We of course have St. Thomas, which is home to the capital. And we also have St. John, which is definitely the most remote and has the least amount of coverage. For all my car meta haters, I do apologize because that's the only thing really that you need to guess the US Virgin Islands correctly. They have unique Google trucks that hasn't been updated since 2016, and there is currently no coverage plan for the US Virgin Islands. So this is all we're going to get for the foreseeable future. This is the red truck that is only found on the island of St. Croix, which is the biggest one in the far south. You will only see the red truck on this island, not these 2. Now on the same island, you also might see this white truck. So there are 2 vehicles taken on St. Croix. Notice no antenna. All right, there is no antenna on the St. Croix white car. However, here we are in St. Thomas, and we do have an antenna. What? Yes, the antenna with the white car is only found on the top 2 islands of St. Thomas and St. John. This is the only vehicle you will see on those 2 islands, which makes it pretty gettable. Unfortunately, there are not many clues to tell the difference between St. John and St. Thomas. Besides, St. John is definitely a bit more forested, a bit more remote, and there are just less buildings. So that could be a way to tell the difference. Now, the Virgin Islands do use the same infrastructure as the US, which makes sense because it is a territory, but they do drive on the left, just like Bermuda. But you should not get these 2 confused because, of course, they use much different cars. Next up, we have Curaçao, which is located just north of Venezuela in the far south of the Caribbean Sea. It is a part of the ABC Islands known as Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. Curaçao is the biggest one and is the only one with coverage. So here we are in Curaçao. Let's start with a car meta. Surprise, surprise, I know. But let's just get it out of the way because it is very good in Curaçao. Here it is, a bit more understated than a big truck, which is kind of nice. Here is the front of the car. It is this black hood that you will see. This is a pretty good clue you are in Curaçao. And of course, you will see the roof rack. It's going to be these 2 bars that extend on each side, so you will see 4 of them. And what's very unique to Curaçao are these white stickers that you will see on the front left and the back right. So yeah, these white stickers are very good clues because there are many roof racks in the world of Google Street View, but you won't see them with these white sticker. As far as the Curaçao landscape goes, it's definitely a lot drier than the rest of the Caribbean islands that we have talked about in this video. And there are some decent sized hills. I wouldn't say they're mountains, but we definitely have some decent sized hills. Now, the Curaçao climate is actually a little bit arid and dry, which is fairly unique for a Caribbean island. And therefore, you do get some fairly unique types of plants. These cacti that you will see on the side of the road are actually pretty common in Curaçao. There's a whole bunch of them here on this particular road, but they are found all over the island. And when I show you rounds like this, it really just showcases how blue that Bermuda water was. Here it is in Curaçao. Definitely not as blue. Now, the coverage here has not been updated in a very long time, and as far as I know, there are no additional plans for Google to come back here and overwrite this coverage. So all you really need is the car meta and the general landscape looking dry, maybe see a couple cacti, and you should know that you are in Curaçao. All right, and the last territory we have to talk about is going to be Martinique, and I actually considered leaving this off because there is really no coverage on this island except for 3 trekkers. I'm going to turn off all labels so you guys can see just how little amount of street view there actually is on Martinique. Here you see the island. Now you don't see the island, but you can see the 3 trekkers. There are 3 distinct blue lines there. There they are in Martinique. Maybe you can spot them a little bit easier now. I'm going to go through all 3. Why not, right? Here's the first one, going to be in a heavily dense forest. These are all trekkers, obviously, so it's not going to be a Google car. It's going to be somebody that went on foot through these 3 locations. This one's in a jungle. Again, really hard to get this one even for pros. The next one was taken during a tour of a distillery. Now, this one is probably the one you'll likely see if you are going to get Martinique in a round. You'll notice a lot of tourists here. And here we are, part of that same distillery on an actual road, but again, this is still trekker. We are not in a Google Street View car. You are still going to see some tourists, but at least there is a beautiful scenery here. And finally, there is this trekker that goes along the coastline in the south and eventually pops you out here on the beach. This is, again, a very difficult one to spot because you are in the forest and then on a beach. So these trekkers are really tough. A lot of pros will miss this, and I did have to mention it because Martinique technically is in the game. But considering that you will likely never encounter it, you can basically forget about it. Just note, it might pop up. Now, before we get into the Dominican Republic, which I am saving for the last for a reason, we have to talk about these two little islands you have to zoom in pretty far to see. It's San Andrés and Providencia, located off the coast of Nicaragua. It's actually a part of the country of Colombia. It's not a territory. It's just straight up a part of the country, even though it's so far away. And these two islands, again, are going to be rare to see, but probably more common than Martinique at least. Now, if you saw the South American guide here in the channel, then you will know some of the Colombian clues already, including the yellow license plates. And that is still true on these islands. You will still see the traditional Colombia clues, except for, of course, car meta. Who would have thought? Here in San Andrés, which is the southern island, they do use a white truck. This is similar to the ones found in the U.S. Virgin Islands. However, the back is a little bit different. Remember, the U.S. Virgin Islands one had a black back. This one is white, and it's mostly blurred out. So that can help you out. And of course, Colombia also drives on the right, which the U.S. Virgin Islands, they do drive on the left. Now, here we are in Providencia, and this island is definitely smaller and has a little bit less coverage. So with that being said, it is slightly rarer. It does have a different car, though, than from San Andrés. This one is a gray truck, kind of similar to Bermuda. It's a little bit lighter in color. And of course, they do drive on the right here, Bermuda on the left. And you will see the Colombian clues like the Colombian cross here that you will never see in Bermuda. Also, if you take a look at the landscape, these mountains here are a lot bigger than anything you will see in Bermuda. And finally, we have the Dominican Republic, which, as I said, is the only country that's in the Caribbean that does have Google coverage. Haiti does not, even though it is a part of the same island. Only Dominican Republic. And within the Dominican Republic, only 2 cities has coverage. So it makes it pretty easy to region guess the country, at least once you know where it is. But I do have to say that coverage is being taken in this country as we speak, or at least as I speak, because we are going to see new Generation 4 small cam coverage just like Puerto Rico, probably within a year. So that means the car meta definitely going to be a lot less important because it's going to go away. But for now, it is here, and I have to tell you about it. And it will always be here, so it is useful to learn, at least a little bit. It is actually similar to the Curaçao car, but instead of black in the front, it's going to be white in the front. And in the roof rack, you will see this thick black bar in the middle here that is not found in Curaçao. This is fairly unique car, and if you see this, great sign you are in the DR, at least for now. So with that being said, I'm going to list a lot more clues to guess this country because the car meta is not going to be as good of a clue in the future. The first one being they do drive on the right side of the road, and this pink band on the pole is actually only found in the capital city of Santo Domingo. It's not going to be found in the more northern city. Now, you usually won't see them in the front, but in the back, the license plates are actually quite helpful. You will see there is a little bit of a yellow tint on the top of the license plate, while the bottom is white. This is a great clue for the Dominican Republic. Now, in Central America and Mexico, they use alto on their stop signs, but here in the Dominican Republic, they do use pare. This is also found in Puerto Rico, though, so that does make it slightly tricky, but it does differentiate it from mainland Central America. Of course, we do speak Spanish here in the Dominican Republic, but the area codes are going to be different. It's not going to be that 787 from Puerto Rico, which definitely can help you out. But a lot of the things are very similar in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, so once they have the same small cam blur, it's going to be difficult. Of course, Puerto Rico does use a lot of American infrastructure, and the Dominican Republic uses their own, so that will be a difference. You also may see a lot of American companies in Puerto Rico, and you won't see those same companies here in the Dominican Republic, which can help you out there. So there you have it. That is the Caribbean Sea. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end, and I hope you learned quite a lot because these are very important islands to learn, besides Martinique probably, honestly. To help you all learn all this, I did build a OpenGuessr map that's linked in the description. Go ahead and play that map completely for free. It should help you memorize a lot of these card metas a little bit easier. If you have any questions about anything, please leave it down in the comment section below. I really hope Google releases more Caribbean islands because this is a really underappreciated area in the Google Maps game world, and I feel like it deserves a lot more. But until then, happy learning, and I'll see you in the next video.